Powers Irish Rye. It's 100% rye. So this St. Patrick's Day, I thought I'd do something a little bit different rather than your typical Irish whiskey, your Redbreast, your Jameson, your Powers, your Spot whiskey. I thought let's try something different. So 100% rye, which is pretty different for an Irish whiskey. I'm Joe Jimenez. This is Citizen of the World. Let's get into it. When I say Powers put out an Irish rye, what I mean is that the rye itself is grain grown in Ireland. Now, rye is no longer a very prevalent grain in Ireland. So Powers made an arrangement with a local farm, so from a single farm is where they grew this rye, and that farm is apparently somewhere close to the original Powers family estate. So they made an arrangement with them, so every year, I guess, they would continue to grow the rye. This is going to become an annual release. And at 36 bucks, what I want to do is talk to you about what this whiskey could actually be. Taking on the challenge of making a 100% rye is not easy. As you know, most, let's call them the American ryes, folks typically refer to the product out of Ross and Squibb. So that's the 95.5 rye, or what folks still call MGP. So that's mostly rye with 5% malted barley. And the reason for that is the barley, the malted barley, helps generate those enzymes that crack the rye, or at least get the sugars out of the rye. My understanding on this, at going to 100%, one of the things they had to do is actually malt some of the rye itself. So we believe that this is a mix of malted and unmalted rye that they then put through a column still, and they have bottled this at an odd proof. It's a 43.2% ABV, so that's 86.4. It's an unusual number, right? Normally you see either like 43 or 40 or 46. This 43.2 is unusual. Don't know the history of that or why they chose that number, but I'm sure it's kind of interesting. Then they put it through a column still. And I think that that's also an interesting choice, because when I think of Powers, I always think of the great Powers John's Lane. That's an absolutely beautiful whiskey. It's my favorite Irish whiskey, and that's a 12-year product. So this product, I think, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a moment, I think that this is great as a cocktail mixer, and it also can be drunk on its own, neat in the Glen, like I'm doing right now. It is surprisingly thick on how it swirls in the glass. You can see it's quite pretty. It has an absolutely gorgeous nose. It's a really, let's say, super sweet nose. I put it like a mix of caramel apple. You get a touch of mint on there, so you can tell right off the bat that this is a rye. I get cherries, and when I say cherry, it leans on the medicinal side. So on the medicinal side of cherry, if that's a thing that you don't like, I'm sorry. I actually find that medicinal cherry usually translates to a really great palate. So in other words, the nose and the palate. And I would also say there's honey in here too. Some folks get some ginger. I think that for me, the ginger shows up on the palate. So let's get into here and have a sip. So a couple of details on this. From what I understand, to be labeled an Irish whiskey, although there's no age statement on this, it must be at least 3 years. So it's sweet on the palate, but the nose, which comes across as very sweet, almost like a bubble gum kind of sweet on the nose, along with the thickness, you would expect it to be thicker, have a greater mouthfeel. It's not quite. It actually starts out lovely on the front of the palate to the middle, but then it kind of washes out to a thinner rye product. And then that's when the cinnamon heat kicks in from the rye grain. This is where folks pick up a hint of ginger and perhaps some pepper. It does taste just like a rye, and I would tell you that if I was given this in a blind, I'd be hard pressed to tell you that this was actually an Irish rye. I have not had this in a cocktail yet, but I expect that this would be absolutely fantastic. Now, I think over a cube of ice, it would probably water it down and it would turn a little bit more tannic. I'm expecting it would be maybe a little more tannic on the finish. The finish is on the medium short side, or perhaps a little longer than short, perhaps not quite medium, and it does thin out. Thins out and becomes a little drying on the back, as if you were having one of those cinnamon chewing gums. So no longer the bubble gum, but you actually now move to a cinnamon chewing gum, that kind of feeling. Beautiful nose, lovely, lovely whiskey. I think it's a great option, particularly for St. Patrick's Day, and a lovely alternate to any of your other ryes, particularly if you're using a cocktail. And at that $36 price point, I think it's very accessible, easy to get to, and well worth the buy to try. And on St. Patrick's Day, why not do something a little bit different? You can have your Irish whiskey, but have a touch of 100% Irish rye. And typically what folks think of when they think of rye, they either think of Canada or the US. As I mentioned before, it's kind of surprising that it's Irish. Another fun thing that might be, that you might want to do sometime in the future would be to do a blind. Maybe blind your friends with, let's say, a Ross and Squibb 95.5, some other Canadian rye whiskey, this one, and then for craps and giggles, do a typical Kentucky rye, one of those barely legal ones, and see how they see what they think about it. I bet you they won't be able to tell which one is the Irish. Anyway, Joe Jimenez, citizen of the world, get out and try something new. Get out and try something like this Powers Irish Rye, or 100% Irish Rye. And if you like this type of content, tell your friends. Click subscribe down below and give me a thumbs up, or leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about this particular whiskey. Sláinte.